So, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we are in a 2010 LCI 318 BMW. Now this is an interesting talking point because these cars are getting incredibly competitive on the market. They're great budget friendly cars, these, and in fact we haven't done a chassis like this, in a sense of stripped back and relatively, I'm going to say entry level at the start of this video, because it has analog climate control. It's not digital at the bottom, it hasn't got the iDrive screen, but this means this vehicle is easy to find, easy to get hold of. Still, in my opinion, these days creates such a buzz of bargain car, in my opinion. Today we're going to go and find out what they're like to drive, the amenities you do get on one of these more entry-level BMWs, and talk about pricing and how much it is to actually own one of these, because I feel like, again, from the outside shots I'm showing you right now, this is a hell of a car for, let's say, 3 to 4 grand. Yes, you can find one of these relatively cheap with higher mileage. This one, though, has some good mileage on it. In fact, as we start it up, it has 82,000 miles, which I think is good. Is good mileage, because a lot of these are 150, 160,000 miles. You'll see them for about 1,000, 2,000, nearly 3 grand. This one, I reckon 3,000 to 4,000 pounds will get you into this car today. Yes, you'll find a cheaper one that's ruined, but this one is just lovely paint. But this one is a really good example, though, of these cars, these more budget friendly or bargain cars that I feel like everybody could get themselves into these days. Anyway, enough of me blabbing. Let's get on the road, see what this thing's like. And if you would like to support the channel in any way, please subscribe. But if you would like to pick up some of FYD Apparel goodies, we have just dropped a ton of new stuff. We've restocked a load of the stickers in every colour imaginable. As you can see, we have these B-Road Basher jet tags, and I've also just restocked all of the air fresheners, available in 3 packs or singly in the nicest new car smell. Keep this channel alive by supporting FYD Apparel. The link is in the description. Firstly, start off by saying, how is this a 13-year-old car? When you think of a 13-year-old car, when was this a 13-year-old car? It's actually really nice that these cars have aged so well. If this drove past me, of course this has got a private plate on it, so it looks like a 55 reg, but it's a 09 10 plate car. Doesn't look too dissimilar to the relatively new BMWs that are cruising around today. But firstly, what's it like to drive? Coming out of, you know, various cars that I shoot for the channel, first impressions are the gearbox feels really tight. The actual click from gear to gear is actually really satisfying. It's oddly satisfying. I know it sounds silly because this is a relatively entry-level BMW. It actually feels really good to change gear in. I'm glad that they've still captured that in these cars. This being a 6-speed manual, you do have the 6th gear when you're cruising along. They do quote about 40, 45 mpg in these if you're on a run. This one's actually showing just over 25 mpg. Now this is because I have been enjoying this on the way here. I've sort of, you know, reset the trip as we go, and I've been up and down country roads enjoying this. You will see that, but you'll see well over 30 and into the 40s if you are cruising. But this has the 2-litre 140 brake horsepower engine, being a 318. Again, if you're daily driving this and cruising, it doesn't necessarily matter how much power is coming out of that 2-litre. I think it's a good healthy amount of power, rear wheel drive, manual, and of course this car doesn't come with the price tag of other M Performance variant cars or M cars, but it still feels nice to drive. That's the main thing here. And at 82,000 miles, it feels good. There's no cracks, bangs, there's no horrible harshness in the suspension, there's no wear in the interior. This has the full cloth interior. Again, a relatively entry-level interior, but it is still really comfortable in here. They're nice and supportive, got a little bit bolster on them. The thing is, for generational cars like this, even the more entry-level cars are still very good. There's still tons of amenities in here. You can't get a boggo standard version of a car these days. This still has AC. It still has a really good sound system from the factory. It's still comfortable. I'm not really lacking a lot. Yes, you could opt these up to the hills if you wanted to, but I feel like even this one, you're not going to necessarily miss digital climate control and that iDrive screen. And in fact, I recently shot a 335D for the channel, that I really enjoyed, but it had no iDrive system in it. And I started to think, well, that's actually quite a nice option not to have. It sort of opens up the dash in a sense. I did say club sporty, and yes, this isn't a club sport whatsoever, but it gives that vibe of more a stripped out, only have what you need in the car, if that makes sense. So second gear, 140 horsepower. Actually revs round to 6,500 RPM, this thing. Now, you're not going to break any land speed records, as I usually say, in dailyable cars, but it has actually a pretty healthy rev range. Of course, you can have fun in this car if you want. You can kick the clutch and try and get the back out. There's no LSD, obviously, but it does create a little bit more of excitement in your daily commute. If you needed a daily driver, you still want a manual, you still want to have something that's relatively engaging. This sort of has it. As we do pull up in some traffic, I will say the interior is a lovely place to be. Again, I always revert back to my M4, paid a lot of money for that car, and this is a very far away car, don't get me wrong, but like everything you see and everything you touch is very similar in the newer BMW stuff. So even down to the buttons and the window switches, the switches for just everything basically is pretty similar. You do have an ashtray in the center, and you of course have them fantastic cup holders. I do like these cup holders. They are one of the best cup holders that we have in the market today, in my opinion. Got a center armrest, you put stuff in there, and there is actually an aux in there, which is quite good. And you have a center coin tray just down here. I'm going to say it again, it's comfy in here, it's easy, it's dailyable. And being an LCI model, the LED lights outside facelifts the car, but again, this don't look like a 13-year-old car. You wouldn't even know. Say you pay £3,000 for one of these, and I think especially right now, the world's gone crazy with car prices. I still think they are up, and yes, you can get a really cheap one of these, high mileage, if you so wish to, but even if you wanted to walk into a second-hand car dealership and this is there, it's a hell of a car for the money. It is sort of a bargain, in my opinion. It's the bargain daily driver. It still looks the part. It ain't going to cost you the earth to keep on the road. And even down to reliability and stuff, I don't hear any horror stories of this chassis really going wrong, especially these engines. They seem to go on and on and on and on, which is really reassuring, considering if you're wanting to drive around a lot and take the kids to school and go here and go there. Cars are expensive at the moment. New cars are horrendously expensive at the moment, so if you can jump into something that still looks new and nice, not loads of miles, still does good MPG, not going to cost the earth to run in tax, insurance and stuff, this being insurance group 23 as well, which is relatively low for a BMW. Obviously, if you are a little bit younger, please make sure you do insurance quotes prior to going to get one of these. But if I was, say, 19, 20, I'd be well happy in one of these. I'd have thought that this is probably the best thing ever. And even right now in my 30s, if I needed a little daily driver, I know full well that the BMW 3 Series from this generation is such a nice, capable, equipped car that's doing good MPG and is really nice to drive on a daily basis. Now, where a lot of these were company cars, there is a lot in the market, which is good for a used car buyer, and usually quite a good thing, because company cars, yes, they've been driven up and down the motorway, sort of like this one. I bet it was a company car at some point, because it is a BMW Professional. It says it right here on the radio in front of me. It does scream company car, this car, because it's relatively entry level. I would expect that a company would have taken this car on and bought it and then used it around maybe a fleet. That's what these cars were like. This is what a lot of these BMWs, especially in this generation, were used for. And that's why there is a huge saturation in the market for them. But you've got to find out which ones are which. And I will say that's a relatively good thing. But of course, do your research like you would on any car. I would like to think this thing has had a nice life of being driven up and down the motorway in 6th gear, but you don't know until you look into it. But to be fair, from where I'm sitting today in this exact car, it feels like it has sat on the motorway and never been revved in its entire life. And again, I drive a lot of cars, a lot of high mileage cars. I own a high mileage car as a daily driver. So I'd like to think that I would notice straight away the wear and tear on a car. This one just doesn't have it. We'll tip 3rd gear. Get the foot down, 3,500 RPM. Again, there's no surge of power, but it goes pretty well. BMW will claim, and Parkers especially, will claim over 600 miles range on one of these cars. Now, today, it's got a quarter of a tank of petrol and it was showing 100 miles. Now, of course, if you were on the motorway, you would get a lot more than that, I think. You'd be looking at about 400-500 miles maybe, with a little bit of town driving. You might see over 500 on the motorway. But again, keep that in mind when you are daily driving a car like this, a manual with a 2-litre naturally aspirated engine. You, of course, driving around town, doing bits and bobs, you will probably retain the 25 to 30 mpg that I'm getting today. With that, guys, I'm going to end today's video here. Thank you so much for watching. Again, what do you think of the car market in a general at the moment, but more of a bargain daily driver like this one right here? Yes, you can buy one cheaper, but if you were to walk into a used car dealership and this was 3 grand sat on the forecourt, is that a deal? I think it is, personally, after driving this car today. But thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.